Good afternoon. My name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development. As you know, we provide professional informational workshops on different subjects. Today, we're going to be talking about where is the money related to nonprofits and nonprofit funding. Of all the workshops that I do related to nonprofits, that is, where is the money is the most important one for them. In addition to that, when I do work with for-profits, the most important component is where is the money. Let's talk about the money. But first, before we talk about the money, I want to give a little bit of information about me, what we do, and then we're going to go over to talk about where is the money and how did you get the money and who got the money. So I mentioned earlier that my name is Michael Randolph. The photo that you see on this particular slide is me giving a presentation before the University of Florida grad class on grant writing at the University of South Florida, as well as community development. I've also had the honor of giving workshops back in the day at the Johns Hopkins University on that to their grad students on community development. So I was born in the Sandtown community of Baltimore, very poor community. What I specialize in is program development, that is, how to develop those programs to get funded. So strategic and tactical planning, business development, organizational development, grant proposal, and community and economic development, just to name a few of the things. I started back in 1980. Remember what I told you earlier? I'm coming from a poverty-stricken community. I started out with the idea of how can I get the skill set necessary to change the narrative in my community. So I started as a community organizer. From there, I advanced to a community strategic planner, a program developer, and then designing comprehensive solutions to urban problems in distressed neighborhoods throughout the United States. I started it in 2011. Keep in mind, I have over 30 years experience, specifically working with a nonprofit. We started to provide technical support in the area of effective skill sets to start up and existing nonprofit. To date, the organization has provided technical assistance nationally to over 3,500 nonprofits, government agencies, faith-based groups, businesses, and individuals throughout the United States. We have assisted over 300 nonprofits get started in over 20 states nationally. Okay, let's get to what you want to hear. Where is the money? So let's first talk about what are the different types of grants. This is important because a lot of people confuse grants, types of grants when they go to write a proposal. So let's talk about one of the least likely type of grant, a unrestricted grant. An unrestricted grant may be used for general purposes. Most grants, however, are called restricted grants. So let's talk about the different types of restricted grants. The first type is a program and project grant. You all know about this because you know that in order to get funding, you have to have a program or project. This type of support usually is specific to measurable outcomes when you go after these funding. They want to know what are the measurable outcomes that you're going to bring about. The next type of grant is seed money. This is normally for new experimental and innovative projects or pilots or demonstration programs, seed program, when you want to start a new program. Seed money is also when you just start your nonprofit to go after money to bring on your first employee, which should be the CEO. The other type of grant is known as capital grants. Capital grants are projects, for example, construction or renovation of physical capacity, also including trying to go after money for land acquisition or major equipment purposes. Again, make sure you keep the different types of funding, different types of grants separately when you go after a grant. The next type of grant, and I include this to be have an array of all the grants, is called endowment. Endowments are normally for colleges and universities. You have someone that decides to bequeath, for example, a university X number of dollars or a college X number of dollars. The next type of grant or type of grant, grant like anyway, is what I call challenging or matching fund grants. This is when an organization base its giving you money based on you being able to raise other money, that it is contingent upon a program for 100,000, and they say we'll give you 80,000, but it's contingent upon you being able to raise 20,000. Trust me, later on in the presentation, you're going to learn that there's a tens of thousands of foundations and corporations that fund programs. The next type is called in-kind support. In-kind support is when, or some people call it pro bono. It's when in-kind support is anything that you get for free that you would normally have to pay for. Let's say a person volunteered their time to your organization. That in-kind support should be placed in your in-kind support column and tells about what the value is on that. Or if you have a lawyer that's doing volunteer for your organization, what does he normally pay? Or an accountant that's normally, what does that accountant normally get paid? That's what we call in-kind support. When you're looking at your pro bono work, those that volunteer for your organization, and including lay people, as regular people, as well as experts. Now, let's talk about the different types of grantors. You have your individual. This to keep you on point. We have three columns here related to grantors. We have three columns. The first column is we have three columns. The first column talk about who the grantors are. The next column associated with it, that's right over next to it, is the advantages and disadvantages of going after a grant. And then the last column is the column is the advantages of going is the disadvantages. You don't go after, when you look at this list, don't go after these funders simply because they are funding. Look at what the advantages are and the disadvantages are. So let's talk about the individual types of grantors. You have your family and your community foundation. Your family foundation are those foundations that are biologically connected to each other, like your Gates Foundation, Obama Foundation, Clinton Foundation. These foundations are foundations in which the family actually running. The second type of funding is called community foundation. Community foundation are those foundations that fund programs in the immediate community. Like here in Tampa, we have what's known as the Hillsborough County Children's Board that fund, but they only fund in Hillsborough County. In Miami, you might have the Miami funders. They only fund in Miami. In Baltimore, it's the same example. These are community foundations that fund within the community. The next type is known as corporate foundations. And corporate foundations are, before I get to the corporate foundation, let me go to the very top again because I think I skipped it. And this very top is the ones that give the most money, and these are called individuals. Now, keep in mind the disadvantages and advantages of going after these funders. The individual, like you and I, are by far the greatest uh, uh, funders. Your friends that give you money for your organization, people that you know. These are called individuals that give money, as opposed to the second type, which is the family and community foundation, and then the corporate foundation. The corporate foundation, by way of I'm showing how important they are. Corporate foundation give up to 5% of their net proceeds in order to maintain that foundation status with the federal government. They have to give at least 5% of their net proceeds. There are over, but let's get to the next one. Besides the foundation, corporate foundation, and that can be anywhere from Starbucks to Publix to Winn-Dixie, Bank of America, etc. All these are foundation, corporate organizations. And they get benefits from the government, subsidies from the government, as long as 5% of their net proceeds are going towards nonprofits. The next type is called federated um, funding sources, like the United Way. And then the last type is what we call government funds, federal, state, county, and local. These by far are the most, the hardest monies to go after. If you just getting started, probably the easiest money to go for is by way of corporate foundation. Okay, let's continue. Now, that being the case, how do we find the money? Keep in mind there are over 80 to 100,000 foundations and corporations that give money throughout the United States, throughout the world. Most of these funders you're not going to be able to find if you Google it. Let's say if you Google something and say, what organization are funding you program? You're only going to get less than a of those that are doing it. Here's another way of doing it to find that money. Well, the first look is to look at the category of federal domestic assistance. About if you're going after federal money, this is going to let you know what money is going down the pipeline. Then you're going to look at the Federal Register in terms of federal dollars to find out what committees are recommending funding for what subject matter. The Foundation Center is one of the major ones. The Foundation Center, you can find over 100,000 foundation and corporation that give money throughout the world. Again, unlike trying to Google it, the Foundation Center is the place to go when you're looking for funding. They can tell you basically full funding. Using the Foundation Center, you just simply go in there and you say what you're looking for, youth money, where you're located, and how much money you're looking for at the very least. And it's going to give you everybody that's funding that particular subject program that you want and that amount of money that you're looking for. The next one is the federal business opportunity. You can also find grants there. Grants.gov, if you're looking for federal grants, this is where you go for to search for federal grants on the federal level at grants.gov. Another search mechanism is called Grant Station. They also provide ways to search for funders. There are four things that you should keep in mind when you're going after a grant. First of all, because grants are so compatible, contrary to popular belief, for every grant that you're going after, that's probably about on the low level, 50, 67 people that's going after that grant, and on a higher level, national money, it's going to be anywhere from saying dollars. Contrary to popular belief, when you're going for money for your nonprofit, it's not as easy as you think it is unless you're prepared. Now, here is some steps that you should take in order to increase your opportunity to get that grant. I've been both a grant writer as well as a person that award grants. So I sat on different types of committee. I specifically understand what funders are looking for when they look at your particular grant. And coming from the how to write a grant perspective, I know how to put together the grant. I'm what you call a master grant writer, in that I not only write grants, but also teach how to write a grant. So the one thing that they're looking for, the first thing they're looking for in terms of this process that you should do is to read the forms and the guidelines. A lot of people do not read the forms or the guidelines, they just simply start to write the grant. Also, always look for a person that received that grant in the past. An X Foundation received a grant from, let's say, Bank of America. Contact that group and ask them what are some of the obstacles that I should look for and what are some of the things that I should do in order to get that grant. Most past funders will share that with you since they're not going after the same grant. Again, you can find who these people are through the Foundation Center, Grant Station, and grants.gov. Then talk to someone that actually was part of the team that awarded that grant. For example, if you're going for money for the Foundation Center, and let's say you put in Bank of America, for example, the year is 2024, find out, okay, who were the people that set in on this grant? And then contact them because it's all public information and ask them, hey, what is it that you look for when you were funding this organization? And then finally, and this is most important, is to contact the program officer. Every time a grant comes out, well, most times, that is for your large funders, they have a program officer. Contact that program officer and run your idea past that person before you even write that grant. If you follow these steps, I think your chances of getting that grant will be increased. Since 1990, I've worked with either writing the grant proposal or giving input to a grant proposal that was being written that over periods could collectively brought in over $70 million in terms of program and project funding. This anywhere from community development deals, economic development deals, program development deals, all of those different types of funding sources that I was able to be a part of. Let's continue. I've been writing grants and for over 30 years. And every time I go to write a grant for an organization, I always contact the program officer of the grantor who's giving the money, just to get a feel as to, hey, this is where we're trying to go. Are we on point? If you follow these 4 steps, this 4-step process, you will increase your chances of getting that grant by 70%. So, what do I tell nonprofits in terms of going after that particular money? So, I put together what I call a social entrepreneurship approach. That is, and most importantly, as a nonprofit, you cannot only focus on grants, so you will die. It's like you're gonna crack cocaine. I remember one of my instructors told me that when I took a course in community development and I was talking about grants, and he said, look, grants are like crack cocaine. You keep going back, you keep going back. The way that funders look now as to who they're gonna fund, they say look at earned income. And earned income is those dollars that you bring in that you get paid for. For example, my nonprofit provides training program, so we actually get paid. So let's talk about this social entrepreneurship and what is it? It's the ability to fund the future of nonprofits through a combination of earned income. We talked about that earlier. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Charitable contributions and public sector subsidies. Get this. The earned income is used to pursue your social objectives by simultaneously seeking both financial and social return on your investment. So let's look at this breakdown. It's broken into 4 columns. The first column is revenue, that is where you're going to get the money from. The column under that is output. What are you going to use the money for? The column that's on the next column is outcomes. The outcome is who's going to benefit. I mean, the outcome is what are going to be the results of you providing this type of service. And then finally, benefits. What are the benefits of that the funders and people that are investing in you get from this? So again, it's revenue, outcome, and benefit. In terms of input, just to go back a little bit before we get to inputs and talk about the outcome. Outcome means how have you changed that person's life because of the program that you gave? What were the programmatic benefit that changed that person's life? Like a person that had no job now have a job. A person that had no skill, you have to be able to show the outcome. Okay, let's continue now to the next. And that's basically revenue that you're bringing in. You're going to be looking at, regular grants and social media fundraising. I can't overemphasize paid social media fundraising strategy. Because we just put something on Facebook and you think you're gonna get funded like that, that's not gonna happen. No, Facebook is gonna put you way under where people can't see you. But if you pay for it, it's worth it. Then they're gonna put you way at the top. The other thing is feed for services. You need to begin to think about how can you charge your clientele for the services that you provide. Funders like to see this. The fee for service doesn't have to be a lot of money. If you're working with a specifically poor clientele, it might be $5, $10. You just want to show that you're using different strategies to bring in the money. Development fees. If you are a nonprofit and you're dealing with like housing or anything of that nature, or building housing, you definitely can get a development fee for that. when one of the nonprofits I work for, well, a couple of the nonprofits I work for every house that they build, for example, they got $30,000 back to put back into the organization. So this is organization that's doing a physical project. And then consultant fees. Well, what do we mean by consultant fees? For example, your organization can become so good at what you do. Now you can teach other nonprofits that do the same thing how they can do it, and you can get paid for that. And then next, the earned income that we talked about earlier. This what we mean by own and operating your own business. For example, I that work with youth. And what they did was to start a t-shirt shop. And they hired a youth to do it. And they was able to bring in money that way. Or ice cream shop, for example. I know the cities here use both of these mechanisms for earning in order to bring money into the organization by starting your own business in order to be sustainable. Partners look at besides rents, how are you and what are you doing to increase your capacity to bring in those dollars? Investments in financial securities is another way that you can bring in dollars into your organization. Now, let's talk about the output. The output is when you talk about the programs and projects you plan to bring about. For example, in this organization, the programs and projects that they're going to bring about is employment program, public safety, youth programs, community building, etc. The next column is the outcome. What is the outcome of what you're doing? In this case, they're saying they're going to increase employment opportunities for people in the community, increase affordable housing, reduce crime, improve the quality of life of individuals. So the outcomes we want to emphasize what on the other side, what the outcome, the results, how you going to how the people are going to benefit from what you're doing. And then the second column is benefits, but only benefits as it relates to the funders. What are the benefits to the funders? For example, if you're doing a community development project, you're going to say the benefit is a higher return on investment for grantors and funders that's bringing in money in terms of increasing their tax base. If you're reducing crime, if you're improving businesses, you increase the tax base. A reduction in required city services. For example, if you're doing community development, you're also looking at reducing crime in the neighborhood, reducing trash in the neighborhood, and things of that nature. So the city, those services. Especially, for example, another financial institution, the benefit that you're going to bring to them is a well, lenders, yeah, the benefit that you're going to bring to the lenders is to reduce in their risks because you're improving the quality of that neighborhood. When they put money in the this, because the community is improving, then that's a less risk for them in terms of not getting their money back, especially in low and high crime neighborhoods. To investors, what you're saying to them is that when you invest in us, it's going to increase on your return on your return, an increase on your investment. For example, the city government, you say to them, it's going to be an increase on your investment. We're going to definitely increase the return on those dollars by reducing all these city services, etc. That's just one example. When we got people that's investing in you, you need to make an argument that the return on that investment is going to be a high return on that investment. And then next and finally, no matter what you're doing, this last column is you're going to better, you're going to increase the quality of life of visiting individuals that live in that community. Okay, now, what is it that funders look for in terms of funding you? The first section talks about where the money is and give you some ideas on how to go for that money. Now we're going to talk about, because like I said earlier, I have an experience in terms of actually sitting at the table a as a individual group that was put together to help evaluate grant proposals that was coming from different sources. And I sat on the table so I understand what the funders are thinking like. And from my takeaways from all of those that experience is here's what funders are looking. First, they want to make sure that your organization has a sustainable financial model. Remember that model we talked about earlier that increases grants and also earn income? That's what they're looking for. The next thing they want to know is how is your organization different than any other nonprofit? What makes you different? What makes you unique? Then they want to know what are the hard and soft data that support your position that there is a problem. This is where you provide for quantitative and qualitative research to argue your point about the problem from third party sources. Then what measurement tools are you use? Are you going to use? What matrix are you going to use to show what success look like? Is it going to be a logic model, a theory of change, etc.? And then they want to know what's the reason for starting your nonprofit? And this is where you get compassion at. For example, a mother that lost her son to violence in the streets. This way she began to say, I start not because I want you, but in order to deal with the deep pain that won't go away. And then they want to know what value do your organization bring to the table? What do you consider when it comes to value? This is important also. Make sure that you network, you partnership, and you collaborate with other organizations. And then finally, but not finally, finally, accounting practices. Make sure that you got your finances in order. You can use like software that you can get in order to, if you don't have an accountant, some of the software that you can get in order to help you manage that money until you're able to get an account. It's like QuickBook and those other financial tools that you can use to make sure that you can count for every cent that come in your organization. Who gave it, why they gave it, and how it was spent. And then finally, when we put this all together, funders look for, is your program feasible, sustainable, plausible, and is it fundable? So our next presentation is going to talk about how to create a fundable program. We're going to break down what are the different components of a program related to goals, objectives, practice, outcome, input, impact, all that stuff on our next presentation. If you want to reach us, you have the numbers here. In addition to that, on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, please do so. In fact, hook up with us because you can then get alerts on what is the next program that we're going to be doing. If you are a nonprofit that's struggling to try to bring in money for your nonprofit, and you're trying to find a funding mechanism that actually brings in the dollar, especially to those nonprofits that are mom and pops, and they are making it basically by donations. They're not really getting any funding or anything of that nature, but they're doing the hard work that's necessary. Organization that's doing the hard work and you bring in funding, but like any other organization, you want to be able to bring in your more funding. Normally, when an organization hook up with us, even a big organization, we able to get them anywhere from 2 to 3 times the amount of funding that they was getting prior to hooking up with us. Feel free to go to this website right here. It's a form that you're going to complete. You're going to tell us a little bit about you and how we can help you. So please hook us up. Until the next time, just keep doing what you're doing.